If I asked you to tell me the location of England, could you? You probably could. What if I asked you to tell me the location of Kazakhstan? A few of you might be able to, but for most of you, you'd want to look at a map. But what if the map you got handed was completely foreign to you? Now, seeing a map like this might make you question, what if I took an even weirder look at what the world is? Well, there's nothing stopping you. Now, seeing this map might make you ask a question so deep you could be mistaken for a conspiracy theorist. Do I really know what the world looks like? The answer to that question, no, you probably don't. But don't worry, by the end of my speech today, you should have a very good idea of what the world truly, really looks like. Now, I have done extensive research on this topic, both in my hours of compiling online internet articles and in my daily viewing of the global map positioned directly across from the toilet in my downstairs bathroom. Now, this topic should be pretty important to you. It's always good to know about the world around you and what it actually looks like. And you never know, someone may ask you one day to point out Kazakhstan again, and this time you should be able to. Now, in my speech today, you should notice two main issues that I have with the maps of today. The first one being the naming of countries and how some countries have multiple names and some countries aren't actually countries and things like that. And how the second issue being how our map projection that we commonly use is sort of complete crap and is actually terrible for knowing what the world actually looks like. But first, let's look at the names of countries and why that can be such confusion. Now, some areas have names that are created by geography, and some have names that are created politically. A good example of this would be the British Isles. Whoops. Oh, of course. I forgot to mention the term I used before, the map projection, is actually just a way of presenting a map. This would be the Poco-Dyer equal area projection, and this would be the Pierce conjunctural projection. But a good example would be the British Isles. There are 5 countries in the British Isles: England, Wales, Scotland, Northern Ireland, and Ireland. These 3 countries here grouped together are called Great Britain. These 2 are grouped together to be Britain. These 4 are grouped together to be the United Kingdom. Only the United Kingdom and Ireland there are in the United Nations. However, they are all 5 countries. This island here could also be called Ireland, even though it has a country in it called Ireland. So it's actually pretty confusing when you think about it. I made a chart in case you didn't get that. Another example would be the Nordic countries. You see them here. There are actually 5 Nordic countries: Finland, Sweden, Norway, Iceland, and Denmark. Greenland being part of Denmark, if you didn't know, which is really weird considering the size difference. They all participate in the Nordic Council, they all have similar structure and currency, and they all speak Scandinavian languages. The Scandinavian languages is where we run into a hiccup. All 5 of them are Nordic countries, however, only Norway, Sweden, and Denmark are considered Scandinavian countries. If you go farther, only Norway, Sweden, and the top half of Finland is on the Scandinavian peninsula. And if you add in that, there's a graph for it, and if you add in even lesser known terms, it becomes even more confusing. Another issue would be how different countries have different names in different languages. So if you went to the Netherlands, you would say the Dutch people speak Dutch in the Netherlands. However, if you asked a Dutch person to say it, they would say Nederlands spreken Nederlanders in Nederland, which almost makes it sound like they want us to just drop the Dutch altogether. And we might as well give it next door to Germany, because they would say Deutsch sprechen Deutsch in Deutschland, and we would say Germans speak German in Germany. So it's really weird, but you could say, all right, that's just different languages. That's sort of just how it works. Well, fine. Let me move on. Let's take a look at why. I forgot to mention. There are so many different names for one country that you could almost create a Wikipedia page on it, which there is. There's actually 83 terms for the United States of America. In a speech done by David Graham of GRC International Databases, responsible for compiling and keeping knowledge of all international works. Now let's take a look at different map projections and why the one we use is so dumb. Now, what's important to realize about map projections is that really there's no perfect way to represent the Earth. The Earth is a three-dimensional object, and you can't very well represent it on a 2D plane. There are three common types of map projections: cylindrical, conic, and azimuthal. The projection that I would like to focus on today is called the Mercator projection. There are good things and bad things about the Mercator projection, and we'll go over both of those. This is the cylindrical, azimuthal, and conic. This is the Mercator projection that we'll focus on today. Now, the Mercator projection is optimal for navigating. It was created in 1569 for nautical navigation, and it became popular because of its ability to represent straight lines for you to sail, even though that's actually a curved line around the Earth, as it would be seen in other maps. Now, the projection is still popular today for the same reason. Because of its use as a Google Maps, it is often considered to be the most widely viewed map in the world. But that's really sad, because what it makes up for in area and navigation, it really lacks in sizing. As you can see here, Africa and Greenland look like they're about the same size. Sweden looks drastically larger than California. However, as I will show you, that's not really how it actually is. Using a website called thetruesize.com, you're able to highlight different countries and move them around. You can see California highlighted and Sweden highlighted, and if you move them together, they're actually the same size. One of the ones that's really interesting would be Greenland and Africa. They look about the same size. However, Greenland is actually smaller than Africa's largest country, Algeria. Now, in the modern world, there's no such thing as a perfect map. Even if we could find a way to make a map with clear names for countries that agree in all languages and develop a map projection that perfectly showed the way the Earth looked on a two-dimensional plane, a map today that's perfect is an imperfect map tomorrow. Now, I hope today that I was either able to inform you or put you to sleep, and maybe next time, so when someone asks you to point out Kazakhstan, you'll be able to do it. Thank you.
All right, Cooper, I thought that the content was really nicely developed. You had a good introduction, a very clear thesis. There's a whole bunch of background that you go through in the introduction to set up the speech, give us a reason to pay attention to it. You introduce a few terms in the course of the presentation. It probably could use a little bit more definition, but it's one of those things where because you've got a limited amount of time and because we gave you a little bit wider latitude on what it is you're trying to accomplish, I don't expect everything to come out perfectly. And sometimes, of course, the reason that you're doing something is for humorous effect instead, and I like that. I thought that that was a good style to take into consideration. Gestures, I like the gestures that you use when you're doing indicators on the map. I think you generally have solid eye contact. Sometimes you get a little caught up by having to look at the stuff on the screens, but usually I think you do try to address us. It could be a little bit more consistent throughout the audience, but I didn't see anything that was a big problem, just some things that could be a little bit better. Your presentation, when it comes to your voice, I think your voice kind of has a narrower range, but you have a lot of variety within the range that you're using. And so I thought that you got the sardonic, sarcastic quality in there a few times, just the right amount. Sometimes there were some nice pacing bits that you had there. Even the time that, a couple of times when you went back to something that you were looking at, I thought you did a good job kind of giving us an emotional reaction to that. That worked pretty well. There were a couple of places where there were some transitions that weren't as smooth as they could be, but those were minor glitches. For the most part, everything worked effectively. I did enjoy looking at the world in a different way, several places. I liked the conclusion of the speech when you got to the end. As a matter of fact, I thought I would say it was an excellent finish, but that actually is not finished. That's English for that part of the world. Hey, it's a birthday! It's a birthday! Happy birthday! And there was something. One of the names I didn't see up there, for United States was the Great Satan. Where was that? Because that's what they call us in some parts of the world. All right, thank you.